Members of the Directors Guild, please welcome the 5 nominees for Outstanding Director of a Feature Film by the Directors Guild of America. Gentlemen, as we set up, it's a pleasure and a privilege to be able to spend time with the 5 of you, master filmmakers. A rare opportunity for all of us to talk about the craft. You know, and I was thinking about this, about how this year is actually, in a way, very different from years before, because the 5 films are such different genres and different expressions. But at the same time, they represent the diversity that can be expressed in our craft. So I was actually looking for a moment or two, is there anything that's common in all your films? Strangely enough, by the way, every one of your films has a gun in it, even yours, although they don't get to use yours. But let's introduce the filmmakers first, and then we'll talk about the craft of directing. First of all, to my right is Alejandro Gonzalez Iñárritu, whose picture is, as you know, Birdman, the unexpected virtue of ignorance. And Richard Linklater for Boyhood. And Wes Anderson for the Grand Budapest Hotel. And Clint Eastwood for American Sniper. And Morten Tyldum for The Imitation Game. And I was thinking this morning on Regan's makeup table, there's this little phrase that it says, I think, a thing is a thing and not what is said about a thing. And in a way, your films talk about the craft of directing. Watching your films is really the issue, and we all have, and we're all honored to be able to. But this is an opportunity for all of us to talk about the process of directing. And one of the things I'd like to examine is the pre-production time when we're getting started as director, and particularly, I'm going to start with the subject of location. And Alejandro, I'll start. How did you choose the St. James Theater, and what did you do to it to make it work so that you could be able to shoot it as if it were one shot?
Mm-hmm. Well, good morning, everybody. Basically, the film has had to be designed before we knew that every theater, the bowels of the theaters in New York actually are absolutely impossible to shoot because they are really old buildings with very narrow and non-practical possibilities for the precise things that we need for this film to work. So we arrived, the first temptation was to build the whole thing, to have absolute control in order to make easier this continuous shot without less cutting possible. And like really challenge ourselves to make the longest takes possible from the bowels to the theater and back. But obviously it was impossible to build. We didn't have the money to make it. And you will never get the sense of a theater texture and the things if you build it. I mean, those things have something that you cannot reproduce. It's very hard and expensive. So we end up basically deciding that the bowels and the dressing rooms and the corridors will have to be designed, inspired in a lot of, I would say, photographs and visits that we did to different theaters that has been always fascinated about those theaters. They have a very strong personality and vibe. And based on that, we built the set of that in Astoria in New York. And then it was very difficult to get any theater in New York. In Broadway, all of them are really busy. And we were extremely lucky that the St. James was opening 2 weeks before. It was Barry Manilow's show before. I remember I went to his dressing room and I was almost crying to see 17 shoes and like all these incredible things. So that was Barry Manilow's thing, and I was like, wow. So basically, we got the lucky moment of having that 2 weeks in the time that we can nail it, and we just have 2 weeks. And so basically, we took some of the parts that would be blended with our needs of the vowels, and those stairs with Regan Thompson go down, and the things that we know that were the joints between one and the other, we have to nail it perfectly. And Kevin Thompson, which he did an amazing work. He's from New York. He's an incredible taste. He really got the spirit of what we need. And other funny anecdote is that all the corridors, they were movable in a way because it was impossible for the crew to be around. So they were, always the corridors were narrowing in the storyline of this. But that was basically the design.
So how much in St. James did you actually shoot? Obviously the exterior.
Only 2 weeks.
But what
and
parts
the exterior, maybe a couple of days in exterior. But the film was shot in 29 days. So basically we have 2 weeks in the inside of the theater, and all the others were exterior, and then
and the dressing room itself, that was on Astoria.
Yes.
And those shots that connect the dressing room, for example, there's a tilt down that brings us into the dressing room from the time when we're looking up at the building. Mm-hmm. Those shots were then done as a combination of green screen and...
Exactly. It was exterior, the real exterior of the St. James, with all those other theaters in front that has that, again, that texture. And we were struggling with the light transitions to go from night to day, and then the camera moving at the same time, and then part of it was a set built. So it's a combination of reality.
The roof of the St. James, is that the roof of the St. James?
That's exactly the roof of the St. James, and Emma Stone was afraid to fall. She was really sitting there, and I was really panicking.
Did you put a protector for her to show, or she was just on the edge?
She wants to play like that, and it was terrifying.
Bet I should be asking whether Ed Norton actually was drinking gin, but we won't go there. Thank you. Rick, let's talk about the locations in Boyhood. You're covering 12 years. There are a whole series of houses that Mason and his family live in. What were these places? How did you choose them?
Yeah, it's kind of the opposite. I've done movies where it is primarily one location. That's beautiful. You design it kind of like the theater or the hotel. This was the opposite of that. We didn't build anything. I knew we have like 140-something scenes in the movie. They're all practical locations, and that's just what we didn't really know year to year. It's a lot of locations we'd have to go back. Anyone who's made a film knows, once you're done with that location, they often don't want you back. So it was 1 year. Yeah, we had shot at an apartment, and it's like, I think they rented the apartment to someone else, but they kind of just didn't want us back there. So I was like, well, I think the family's moved. I had that, maybe they're already in. I had that year to kind of figure out what was coming next. So it was just a series of new locations. Every year, new towns. It was a lot of, the family was moving around a lot. So it was more location scouting, but then there's a lot of production design goes into it. You're carrying furniture from place to place.
And there was nothing that you built. So as you were looking at each of those houses, were you choosing? What in your process of actually looking at a house determines it? For example, the house where they're living with her former professor. Who becomes the director.
It was always their socioeconomic status. You put a lot of thought into that. What kind of furniture she'd be buying, what they could afford. So it changes around and kind of goes up and down a lot. So it's more like you put a lot of thought into it.
And the camping scenes in both the first camping scene where they went and with the lake, and then the last scene at the rocks, how did you determine those two in your evolution?
Well, one was pretty close. We were Central Texas based, so one was Pedernales Falls State Park, pretty close to town. But at the end of the movie, the last shot of the movie, we were out in West Texas, Big Bend, the beautiful national park, least attended national park. Very empty, but beautiful. You should go. But actually, we had scouted that location, got all the locations, and things on this movie, as sprawling and crazy as it was, we had gotten so lucky. Things had gone so well, no disasters. Here we were coming for the final shot of the movie. We have our permits, and the United States government shuts down, and we can't shoot there. And we've got like a day. So we were scrambling around and found some new locations in the state park. So filmmaking for me, especially on a low budget, you're always kind of plan B productions. You're always kind of trying to make it work. But I was happy. The locations we found I liked them even more than the state park. So.
And the universities that you chose, what were they? And how did you get to them?
Yeah, we had a couple universities. You just go talk to them. You don't tell them that the students are going to be ingesting a pot brownie. But you say, we're going to feature your school, and, and just hopefully they're happy we shot there.
They didn't...
Go Lobos.
Right. They didn't call back and say...
No.
Okay,
no.
They let it go.
I don't think the film ever showed that they don't really have a movie theater there.
Thanks. Wes, since obviously everything of yours is practical locations, there's no design in any of your movies. I see. Just walk into a place and find it and shoot. So, first of all, talk about the hotel itself, and also talk about the sort of shift of images from the almost cartoon drawings to the photochrome kind of things to the actual location. How did you arrive at this space?
Well, I made a movie in Italy some years ago, and we had a lot of fun, and I had looked forward to it we were all going to have these great apartments in Rome, and we were going to work at Cinecittà, and we were going to have long lunches and wine and set and things like that. And I thought that was what I wanted, and it was a very horrible experience. The movie went 20 days over schedule, and it was just a runaway production, more or less, and I was the cause of that. Everything I've done since then has been shaped by that experience. My new system that I've kind of got for myself is I try to keep every location within about a 6-minute golf cart ride of the hotel, and I found that's been efficient for us. So we found this location of this. At the time, it was an empty department store in this town called Görlitz. We sort of just drove all around in Central Europe. We found this place, and the most challenging thing was getting them to allow me to bring a golf cart into this town. It's not legal, but it was a loose arrangement we had with the mayor. And literally, we didn't shoot anything on a set. We never went on a soundstage. We sort of made the movie has lots of things that are like sets, but they're sort of we've done something within what will be the frame, and but we've adapted the locations. So it was all really around this main location that we found, and it gets a little desperate, along the way. Some probably dubious choices were made, but that's where the digital stuff comes in.
Did you in the sort of the staircases that are in there? So did you then add these to the department store? I mean,
that place. This was a big. It's a department store like one of those ones where there's a big atrium and the store is around the outside, and the staircases that go up the thing. And so what we did was we enclosed the sides of the atrium to make it like there were hotel rooms around it, and that was a hotel.
And the exterior and the choice of mixing styles of the exterior, was this an evolutionary process, or did you know right away as you were writing the piece, this is what I'm going to do?
Well, like what Alejandro was saying, where you were looking you were looking at different backstage areas, and you kind of used things you discovered and that's what ours was really. It's sort of like. At a certain point we realized, well, this hotel doesn't exist. We're not going to find this place, so we're going to have to sort of fudge it together somehow. But we did have a lot of things we liked along the way about these places, and it's sort of greatest hits of a old hotel. In our case, the hotel is probably ultimately the exterior is the size of maybe 3 refrigerators or something like that. And working in that scale, you can do anything you want. You can, when you work with miniatures, it does give you the freedom to make it how you like it.
The funicular using as almost an animated piece, how did that evolve?
Well, we saw a lot of funiculars in that area. In Dresden, for instance, there's a couple of great funiculars, and we saw one that was in this hotel in Switzerland, amazing, dramatic funicular, and so we just made one. It was about like this big, I guess. But
in the museum sequence where all the armors are and all the rest, the exterior of that museum, what was that, and then what did you use for the interiors?
Well, that's a museum in Dresden called the Zwinger. That's a great museum that was bombed and rebuilt. I guess everything in Dresden was bombed, and some of it was rebuilt. But we couldn't get that. We struggled with permission to get inside, and so finally we abandoned that. And this is an example of maybe how far do you push your system of staying within 10 minutes of the hotel. The museum is just. There's one point in this museum where there's a bunch of statues, and then 2 shots later there's a bunch of statues covered with canvas, and they're the same statues. Just there's a little bit of that kind of modular set building that went into that. It always, if you say, I think in this scene the room will be completely black, that gives you a lot of room to work. Did a bit of that.
And your jail, both its exterior and interior.
Yeah, there's a jail in the movie. The jail is a real, it's a kind of a communist era jail. The funny thing with that, which was, we have Harvey Keitel plays a prisoner in this thing, and Harvey had a condition to do the movie. I love Harvey; he's a favorite actor of mine. But Harvey said he would come do this smaller part, but he needed to be living in the jail for a week before that. And he needed his other inmates with him. So I talked to them, and the other inmates were extremely enthusiastic about going there with him. So we got some heaters and things, and they lived there. And they did kind of bond there, I had wanted to pay them a visit at one point, but my schedule was very busy, so I never actually, I didn't manage to show up during that process of living in the prison. I stayed in the hotel. Yeah.
Oh, we'll keep that for there. Clint, how are the hotels in Morocco? Your movie is in literally 2 countries, if not 3. I believe all of the stuff that was supposed to be in Iraq was actually shot in Morocco. How did you determine where you were going to shoot all of the war footage?
We just looked around. We had to get when you're doing a picture that's going to be supposedly in Baghdad or Fallujah or wherever, you have to get the architectures right. And you can either build it like they did maybe in the old days, or build it out in Culver City or something. But we went there in Rabat, Morocco, had a couple neighborhoods that were really good. Really, they passed for almost any of those kind of cities over there. And you mentioned the design of the film. The design is, I have something in mind, but I design it as I go a little bit too. So, you see the picture in your mind, and you discuss it with your cohorts, and then you get in there, and then certain things just come up, and they look inviting at the time. I have 2 have shot in Italy, and long for the long lunches and everything. But the trouble is, they feed you so much, you come back, you're no good for about 2 hours anyway. So you have to sit there and kind of, boom. But it's a great experience filming in all these countries and stuff. You get a wide idea of how to make films.
The last major sequence right before the sandstorm comes in, this is a major location in terms of that story. It's that square that we get to see on video screens as well as from the drone's point of view and obviously all the action. And we're on the roof of it, we're inside it, we're all around it. And it almost looks like an open square that's around it or open area. Was this something that you found, and how did you find it to determine?
Well, we had our guys all went down and started looking at things. We did part of that in Morocco, but a lot of it down in El Centro too. In El Centro, I don't know if anybody's been there or anybody's from there. I don't want to insult anybody, but it's a small town north of the Mexican border, and the wind blows there about 35 miles an hour all the time. In fact, I had to stop on the way down there. I had to stop the car and sit there for a while because there was a dust storm going on that was very much like the dust storm we wanted in the picture. So what we shot down there, and we took an old factory that was defunct.
Got it.
And we had that scene down there, and then we added blew a lot of dust around and made everybody extremely uncomfortable, but it was okay, you know.
In the rooftop itself of that building, so I gather that building was El Centro.
Roof,
was that rooftop also there, or was that one in Morocco?
That was all there, yeah.
That was all there?
Yeah, we just used the factory the way it was. And it's if anybody ever wants a good location, you might go check it out. It's
the relationship between, at the very end, when he is looking to shoot Mustafa, the relationship between that place on the roof and what he's looking at, was that two totally different?
Yes, it was two different. It was that was in Morocco, the Mustafa part, and the other part was in beautiful downtown El Centro.
No, the other American sequences, like for example the one we just saw where they're living, or that bar, or where they're training. Where were you doing all those? How did you find those locations?
Well, the bar. You mean the inside of the bar?
Oh, yeah, and also, but all the sort of American side. I'm wondering how you found them.
They were everywhere. It was everywhere. On Pico Boulevard, there's a bar there that worked fine, and you find different things everywhere. And we have a location guy who goes out and looks, but Rob Lawrence, who is producing with me, he goes out and he checks on them, and then he brings the stuff to me, and then we kind of go over it and then go around and look at it all and no on this, yes on that. And it's just a matter of addition and subtraction.
The SEAL training by the water, how did you learn about that training? Because that's also a major location where they're all training and sort of by the beach and all the rest. How did you? When the SEALs are training, and you shot them both in the training ground in the mud as they're training, as he's training to become a SEAL, and also the stuff by the ocean. I'm curious, how did you know or find out that that's what their system was?
For the training sequence, yeah, the ocean. Well, the ocean's right out in Malibu.
That way, going that way.
Actually, the SEALs train in Coronado, which is not there far, and everything's pretty much the same. We were in Seal Beach for a little bit of it, and then in Malibu and various places like that.
And one more location I'm interested in. I think it's either where they're learning about the butcher. It's a space where there's incredible mosaic, Islamic mosaics all behind it. It's a U.S. station where our soldiers are, but the commander, there's all these phenomenal mosaics, and I'm curious how you came to choose that location, and I assume it was real.
You mean that was all in Morocco?
Got it.
That sequence, and we used all the buildings. Everything was great there. A lot of the places were we had to bring in bulldozers and churn up the land and make it look horrible. But we did leave it better than we got it. So
you returned it to
citizens. We are
good. I'm glad to hear good citizens. Morten, you had. I know you've been listening, but you're part of. I hope there's something interesting you're all getting from each other. But you had 3 time zones to deal with in your movie. When he's a student at Sherborne, when he goes to Bletchley, and obviously the current in the 1950s, if you will. What was your process of choosing locations, and how much did you build, and how much did you find?
first of all, we wanted. We started off with real locations, looking at where it actually happened, and I was lucky enough to shoot the whole film in England. And we didn't have no problem with delicious lunches, which is always my approach was that if possible, I wanted to shoot it where it happened. I was able to do that with the school. The Sherborne School is the real one that Alan Turing went to. Which became a little bit of a problem because I said, we can shoot here, but it should not be about bullying and it should nothing to do about any gay love. Which is the craziness because the whole essence is this is where you meet Christopher and the love relationship never got over. So you have to send them fake script pages. And they said you can have access to our students as extras, and we said no because they're going to tell us what actually happens. so we shot it at Sherborne, which was great because the school was phenomenal. It looked exactly like I think it would looked in 1920, which is this very gothic, almost dooming place. I mean, it's a school that's famous for educating military leaders. I mean, it's. So the 1920s was very easy. We shot everything there and the actual locations.
I assume there's the scene when he's buried underneath that.
Yeah,
he did a studio?
Where he's buried underneath, which is a true story. He was put in a box and put on the ground because they were doing construction in one of the classrooms. And also they have a memorial plate of Christopher Morten, who died when he was a student here. So all of that was actually very easy. We actually just almost didn't have to do anything. The only thing we did was Maria Djukovic, which is my production designer, which is wonderful. She says she's sort of like the queen of wallpapers, she calls herself. So she always makes this incredible, she demands that she makes her own wallpapers, and they are all extremely elaborate. Like everything you saw on Alan Turing's house is all Morse code. Like everything is about dots and lines. I mean, it's stuff like no one even see, but she just loves to put it in there. It's sort of like her own, I don't know, she gets something out of it. I think you can tell later that in here there's these messages hidden in all these wallpapers that no one will see. So Sherborne was easy. And we decided not to go to Manchester to shoot the Manchester scene. I wanted to, but the budget didn't allow for it. So we have to try to find places that looks like Manchester. And the idea with Manchester is that it's fall, everything is dying, and it's wet and it's raining. So we find it, and then we find this house which I really liked, because there's almost no straight angles. Like it has all these weird arches and buildings and things with it, so it became very interesting. The Bletchley Park, I shot some of it at the actual Bletchley Park, some of the interiors, which I later regretted because it's became very restricted because you couldn't do. I mean, you always come in there and then you want to change things. You want to move things or paint things and it became very restricted But I think it was good for the actors because they all felt sort of like the rabbit, like they said, like if we just for fingerprints here, we're going to find our characters' fingerprints. So it's on sort of like for the actors and for the performances. I think it was good to be there and to shoot something and also reminded everybody that this really happened. This is actual location. This is actually history we're dealing with. The exteriors, they shot the big mansion, belongs to Ian Fleming. This is where Ian Fleming grew up.
You mean where Bletchley is supposed to be?
Yeah, the big exterior, which is we calling Bletchley Manor. That's actually the Ian Fleming's family home, which is actually kind of funny because Ian Fleming was working at MI6 at the same time as Turing. We have this part of his Ian Fleming's diary where he writes about Alan Turing, and he was extremely annoyed about Alan Turing because he was this obnoxious geek who was allowed into these MI6 meetings and it would have all these, he vetoed some of the project actually. So it was kind of like a fate that we actually ended up shooting the exteriors at Ian Fleming's family home. So that was it, and then we shot some in London, the bombed out street, which was mostly CGI actually.
Did that apply to the stuff in the tunnels as well?
Yeah, the tunnel was they have one subway tunnel, which is historically correct, which is still, not being changed, which is, of course, five stories underground, and there used to be an elevator that didn't work. So that was like the most nightmarish day we had, because we had to carry everything down, and of course we wanted the crane. And you have 100 extras in period outfits, and we had one day to shoot it, and nothing worked, and we didn't get half of what we wanted. It was one of those days that you want to shoot yourself as a director, because you're so frustrated, and you have this whole idea that the electricity disappears, and we have all these lamps that we wanted to. People light candles or whatever, and this whole thing becomes alive. It's all about keeping your integrity and trying to preserve some kind of dignity and normality under a really gruesome circumstances. To me, I've always been very fascinated about what happens in 39 and 40. I mean, it was a part of the war when they thought they were losing. They were being bombed to pieces every day, and sort of went underground for the night, and then we came up, to see what was still standing. And I wanted to have this sort of period that we're trying to complete crosswords with lights and candles, whatever. And then nobody told me. And then we come down, and then they said, no, this is preserved. You can't do anything with that. And you're trying to improvise and do something, but it was actually, some days are like that, when everything falls apart and you're not allowed to do anything you planned.
Got it. That's true. Fate plays a major role in all our lives all the time. Also in pre-production, and you just mentioned it, there's I suppose this audience knows, there's an amazing exhibit right now next to the museum, our LA County Museum, called Hollywood Costume. It's a spectacular exhibit, and I recommend everybody go see it if you haven't. But it made me think about that stage when we're asking our costume designer and our actors how and what they're going to wear that's going to be appropriate. Now, Alejandro, you got a real challenge, because the entire movie, how many changes? There's some changes for, obviously, when they're doing the play, but other than that, how did you all arrive at what people were going to wear?
Actually, I have to say that it was thanks to Mr. Wolski, which is a legend in the wardrobe. He done all that jazz and films like that. So the guy really, he has more energy than a 20-year-old guy. He's 83, and he's just incredible, excited, and knowledgeable. So anyway, I think he made things easy because the knowledge that he has. There's something in theater that doesn't happen too often in films, that because the actors relate each other almost like an intimate tribe living in that thing for months. There's a lot of intimacy there, so it's very easy to see the actresses or actors in underwears and pants. I mean, there's no glamour there, so it's very, very. And then obviously it comes, and there was a couple of decisions that were made. Raymond Carver's story happens in the 70s, so basically one decision that was crucial was to make that story, that short story, happen a little bit earlier in the 50s, kind of to have a little design that we can, in a way, separate from, sometimes now the wardrobe from the 70s to today is kind of the same. It's so eclectic now. So the wardrobe, in a way, was designed to separate the play that Regan Thompson and all these guys play in the 50s, in that story during the play, then to have these guys as normal life, and then he is playing this lunatic guy, which is the guy who killed himself, the lover. And then obviously the dress, the Birdman suit was another thing. I really enjoy that, really, to design something that could be now speaking to the young audiences, with this kind of materials they play, but at the same time that has some reminiscence of the 80s, you know what I mean? The poster and everything has to be like how the films were. And I actually, it's very interesting to hear all this, because I personally, every time more, when I'm watching films, I'm more and more interested than the story itself. I'm fascinated by every single decision that you are now talking about and everybody's expressing about, every decision that the directors made. Since the location, from the wardrobe, from that glass, because it's funny that nobody really understands that, but every decision made, it takes hours or months or years. And even if it's unconscious, I love to see the frames of every one of the films. Suddenly, I'm looking much more for the details than the story. Sometimes I don't care about the story. I'm just fascinated, and I'm absorbing the world through the unconscious process of exposing yourself by these selections that sometimes can be just improvised, but speak so much about the artist behind and about what the story is about, which in a way all these selections are so exquisite and so hypnotic for me that I am fascinated every time more.
With this, the choices though, and this is what I'm interested in all of you talking about, because you may have a vision that, okay, I want him to wear a brown robe when he goes outside. I'm just using this as an example. The actor who has to wear it has to also own that because it's supposed to be his or hers. What's your process of getting that person to agree?
I think it's a matter of trust. I think there's actors that obviously the wardrobe is actually, as important to live in jail for 1 week. They have to dress that maybe. So I mean, there's some actors that are much more, it has more input or importance in that. But I think that, it has, but I think it's important that you as a director, I try to, my personal process is always try to attach or give every character a color. And I try to colorize them in a way that said, okay, this guy is blue, this guy is red, this is orange, and every color for me has an impact. Repellent or something that I want to be close. So depending in the character I try, and even the design of I have never built a set in my life until now. I hate sets. I always have worked in locations that are real and smell. And one of my fears was that this location that will be built, or this set that will be built will not have smell. I want the walls to smell, and I think Kevin did an incredible work to try to make those corridors as gritty and greasy and smelly as they are, because it's sweat of these actors walking all day, so it smells like shit. And that's impregnated in the whole thing. And sometimes when you build it, you cannot get it. It looks like that. But what I'm saying is that I tried that every color of every actor the set has a color combined with the personal color of them. So I depart from there. And then if the actor, I express why, then he liked it, then we start from there. And in this case, what I was fascinated, sometimes there's wardrobe design, they have like 100 choices, and you get crazy. But, Wolski arrived and said, what about this? No bullshit. After working for 50 years, he was right to the button and said, that, perfect, and everything worked. So, I mean, it was very, very, it has been the most amazing experience that I have with a wardrobe person. It was very, very, very precise. Or the wardrobe of, Reagan, when he got trapped with his bathrobe that is red, I love the fact that he was kind of pretending to be a star with this kind of burgundy kind of, which is a little ridiculous, So anyway, those kind of decisions, I think, are as important as everything. And I think even speak more, because those are the things that, in a way, I think form is even sometimes more important than content. Or obviously there's a marriage, but sometimes form has a very subconscious way.
I'm thinking about two other things. The specifics of him running on the streets in his white underwear as, jockey short, and how Ed Norton appears in the play with this almost entire covered gear.
That was a discussion, for example. Michael wants to have like a little bit more shorty kind of things, and it was it's whitey tighties, you know what I mean? It was ridiculous. It was hard for him to say, okay, I'm gonna swallow this and open the film with my butt there with these whitey tighties and run in the fucking square. That was maybe the part that was more discussed about the wardrobe of Michael. We spent weeks.
But all right, here's the question: you got him
fruit of the loom.
You got it.
They pay us money by that.
You got him to agree. How did you get him to agree? If it took weeks.
Because he has a good body. He's hot. Everybody.
So you said this to him?
All the old ladies in Times Square are, Michael, you're hot! And I said, I told you.
Yeah, but he hadn't put it on yet. You still had to get him to put it on.
Yeah, but Michael, he was just brave enough, and he was above that. But it was a tough one because obviously, it's a tough one for anybody to be in the tidy whities in front of the camera with a butt shot. But it is what it is, and I think he's so brave, and he's above that he said, "Fuck it, yes, it's this guy, it's not me." So,
Great. In the wardrobe of Ed Norton, in the bed with the erection, was there a discussion on that one?
it was real, by the way.
There's a line about. I'm going to go back to your line in your movie about telling a lie to someone who's expecting a lie. I mean,
No, it was one of the funny. It was a funny discussion about. Well, it's embarrassing to say, but now talking about war decision is very stupid. What I'm saying, but is that the toughest was about that. Then obviously the discussion with him was not about his wardrobe. It was about what is the size of that fucking underwear to cover this size or this or this. What size? So we did test of, okay, this is too big. Okay, now the neck. Oh my God. So the wardrobe, the size of that has to fit with the right size for the camera. So that was the big decision.
This is what you spend your day doing.
Exactly.
That's why I like details.
That was pre-production.
We're talking pre-production.
Yeah.
You had to cover an enormous number of bodies, but also specifically a time and the evolution of people and choices, and what went on and how did the choices get made.
Commenting, I get anxious just hearing your stories because that's what you spend your day doing, directing a film. Talking about underwear and this, it's like you think you're just going to work with actors and with the camera. No, it's all spent. But on Boyhood, it was kind of like the locations. It's a practical wardrobe, film. But that said, you spend a lot of time just to make something that you hope the audience doesn't really even notice. We were in a unique spot because we were shooting a period film, but we were shooting it in the present tense. Everything we were doing is going to be perceived in the future. So year one, it's 2002. How will this look 12 years from now? And I wanted to kind of demarcate the years, not with a sign or anything that told you the years had changed, that it just felt different inherently in the movie. So trying to find Carrie Perkins, my costume designer, we just spent a lot of time trying to get the wardrobe that reflects not only the kids' maturity, or the parents too, but what looked like what they might be wearing that year, and with an eye on how's this going to age in the future, what's this going to feel like. And the kids were particularly. I spent a lot of time getting them to feel comfortable in their wardrobe, because they wouldn't have dressed like that at all. They were both very cool kind of too cool to wear like normal clothes. Eller had the taste of a pretty cool 15-year-old at age 7. He had jeans with holes in them, and he dressed like a really cool teenager, like a little rock star, And so it was kind of making him much more dorky and than he really was. So getting him comfortable, spent a lot of time there. But
and when in getting comfortable, how did you do that?
Well, just kind of talking a lot about his character. It just kind of segues into who he's playing. It's not really him. Or Lorelai, my daughter, the young girl, she would never have dressed like that. So you have to, and a kid, you want them to feel comfortable, to be themselves. But so a lot of it's just spend a lot of time getting them to feel okay with what they're wearing. It's different with a kid than an adult. I want them to be comfortable, and yet they're dressing in a way they probably wouldn't. But I assured them as the years went by that they would start to reflect who they were a little more. They weren't starting out who they were, but I thought by the end of the movie they would be kind of who they are.
In Patricia Arquette's evolution, because her wardrobe changes and reflects where she's going, how did the two of you work that?
Yeah, well, it was just fun to talk about that. I mean, at one point she's just a student, and she's a professor. I mean, she's teaching college at some point. It just always reflected kind of her own evolution, what she could afford. I always go back to the socioeconomics of it, where she's at a time. So, and Patricia had a lot of input, in that. It's always that ongoing fun collaboration. And in this case, it was so unique because it was year to year. Well, last year I wore that, but this year this has gone on. And, it was just was
Did you have time
fun
to do any tests of what they would wear or choices? Like we were just talking about Albert Walsey presenting here some choices.
Yeah, pretty. A good designer, like Alejandro said, you narrow it down as much as possible and keep those choices. We were always kind of running and gunning. Like the actors would come in, Patricia and Ethan anyway. They might fly in and we're shooting for 3 days, 3 intense days shoot, and we've got 1 day to pull it all together. So we're making these decisions very quickly. Wow. Very quickly sometimes. The night before, day of sometimes. But we knew each other so well. And it's not what we're thinking about our character. We're not inventing anything. We're revisiting what we've already established. So there was a shorthand that developed.
I was just looking at the T-shirt, and I recognized an artist who I respect a lot, Alex Gray. Was that something you knew, or did something that Eller knew?
That came from Eller.
Wow.
Yeah, and Lorelai, my daughter, we all knew Alex Gray, but he wanted to wear it. So by that point, I really wanted it to reflect what he was thinking. So I was like, yeah, of course your character would be wearing that. Great. Yeah, so.
And thank you. Wes, I know, again, it was all found clothing. I mean, it was very natural. What, talk about the process, because obviously the entire wardrobe of the staff and the hat of Zero, they're all such wonderful specifics. How did they evolve?
Well, it's sort of like what you were saying about working in all these different countries. You go on, you have different adventures in these places. And when I worked in, I have a key grip who we made a movie in India, and he joined us then. And I have people from Texas who've kind of stayed with me in different ways. And I have a costume designer, Milena Canonero, who I met in Italy on this movie in Italy, and we've done several movies together now. And Milena is a great powerhouse kind of costume designer. So really, she's somebody who it's not just that we've got to figure out what they're going to wear, which is a lot of research and whatever it is, but just to manage to get everything made and fitted in the right time frame. And it's not like it's not a big budget movie. It's not a long schedule. So that's the greatest thing, is having somebody like Milena. You have the combination of that stuff. But I had a funny. I had my most memorable sort of costume part of the movie moment was. Milena and I had we never got the cast together for a proper rehearsal. Somebody's doing this project, somebody's doing a play in this play. They're never together. I've never had that. Did you have a big rehearsal for Birdman? That must be a crucial. You must rehearse it like a play. Is that right?
Yes, kind of. Yeah, very fractured in a way, accidental. But the more is the most rehearsed film that I have done by far.
By far, yeah.
By the standards of rehearsals in films.
Yeah, and you had like a 12-year rehearsal process.
4,000 a day, yeah. Ongoing, yeah.
With a day before shooting each one.
Yeah, made it easy.
Yeah. Rafe and I had spent Rafe Fiennes and I had spent a little bit of time together, but Milena and I had kind of done where we were getting things ready in the absence of the actors to some degree. And so I remember Rafe, putting on this uniform that he's going to wear, and we had picked some particular fabrics and things like that. And I just remember his expression, his body language. It was just getting scary. And at a certain point, I was kind of, hovering around, saying maybe it was a little to this or so. And then Rafe says, "Can the actor be alone with the director and the costume designer, please?" To all these people hovering around, 11 Italians. And then Rafe tells me, I understand that you and Milena have chosen that I'm going to wear this purple outfit, and that it's going to fit, and you've designed it, you've done it, and you've made all these decisions on your own, which I respect. But I want to make this a real person, and I am not comfortable, and I don't like this the way this is fitting, and you really think this is good. And then he says, what I want to be is like this. And he transforms in front of me and starts like sort of drifting around the room like Fred Astaire. And I thought, he's perfect. It was a moment when I thought, I really have got the right guy. I mean, both his when he was unhappy and when he was showing me the happiness that he was not feeling. And I thought, and I said, just take it all apart and make it again. Let's fix it, and that's what we did. And I don't know how radically different it looks, but he felt different in it. So anyway, that was for me, it was actually a kind of a great day with him and with Milena.
But sorry, he stayed with the same one that
you got remade.
He just adapted, or you remade it?
I mean, if we want to talk about some of the exact specifics of it, for instance, there was this fabric was can't remember how they measure the thickness of wool, but I had picked a kind of thick wool, and we went with a thinner wool. Well, the pattern was the same, everything's the same, but it had to be remade in a different, exactly the same thinner wool, for instance. It made a difference, and then also just little things about, like the front of it was going like this, and he wanted it to go like that, or something like that. Things like that, little things, and it just changed the way he felt completely, and he was happy.
But that's what I was talking about.
Of course.
That those things are what now in my life obsess me with the film.
But what's
I saw these things, and that fabric, and Wes films. Every guy Wes is the best dressed guy in my life. Where he bought that.
But add to
that he chooses, it affects the character so much that it's about the content. It's not about the form.
But it's also about the relationship, because what I'm fascinated in both cases is you didn't say, no, this is what I want. You listened to the actor, you adapted, and then together you made what, in fact, he ended up wearing.
Yes. Well, the actor made it clear to me that I should listen to him. I remember also, he has these little, they wear these little like hotel concierge crossed key pins. And in a lapel you could put the thing here, you could put it here. And I had to put it here, and Milena had said, the research is here. And that was something Rafe was he was, on the day we were doing our first shot, which is actually a very wide shot. I mean, there's no way that you could see these pins. You could freeze frame, blow it up, and enhance, but you're never going to see this. But we're not going to shoot this until we had made this final decision about which spot the things went. And then finally, I was saying, I think it's here, and he was saying, I think it's here. And finally, I said, let's just put the pins where Rafe says the pin goes. And then Milena and I we went back to our research stuff, and Rafe was right. I mean, he knew already that you're doing the pins wrong, and I will not go up these stairs until we get them right.
I have to ask, although it's not part of wardrobe, but it is part of pre-production, the tattoo on her face, how did you decide which country to represent in that tattoo?
Well, it's supposed to be a birthmark. Do you get that?
I got it. No, I got it. Now I got it for sure.
Yeah. I'm from Texas, and Mexico is the most iconically shaped country in my experience.
The most iconic what?
Shaped country.
Sorry?
Shaped.
Shape, okay.
You got Texas here, you got The other thing is that if you are going to make a birthmark the shape of a country on someone's face, it has a wonderful line for that. Mexico, it curves nicely on the cheek.
Good sideburn. Yeah, good to know.
By the way,
where's your
I love that.
Adrian Brody's coat, which is pretty memorable. I mean, the long one.
Yeah, he's got a black coat or something.
Right.
Yeah.
Was this also designed and built, or?
Yeah, that was. I'm not sure. We had some stuff. Milena had some relationships with some different kind of fashion type of companies and things like Fendi. For furs or things like that, you don't want to have to pay for those if you can get around it. And she has that. And I want to say that Adrian Brody's coat was made for us by Prada, or maybe I know Willem Dafoe has a leather thing.
All right, that Willem Dafoe jacket, which opens up and has I want one of those, has a wonderful place to put a bottle of liquor in it.
Yes.
Could you talk about that?
Yeah. You know, I mean, you got to have some place to put the flask.
But made, that design of that was pretty spectacular in its own.
Yeah. It's you know, you get a good tailor.
Did you actually, though, in serious, did you say to your designers, I want that to happen, or did someone say, how about?
No, you know, I think we probably put it in the script that he's going to kind of, we're going to see all his kind of, because he's got a gun and an ice pick and a flask and that sort of thing. So, I mean, can I ask you, like, when you're doing a film as an actor that you're not directing, do you get very like how into the costume choices process do you get, and does it change with different directors? Sorry if I'm
no, that's he's next online, and I was going to ask something similar.
Because I was thinking about I always heard Sergio Leone. It was a particularly kind of like he was very precise with costumes and things like that. But as long as I'm sitting right next to you, I can.
Sergio was very exact, but at the same token. When I first started working with him, we were working a picture, and we started out with a poncho, a hat, and wardrobe, and we had no triplicates of it. So I'm sitting there, and I'm watching the wardrobe department trailer. Everybody's going in and out, and I said, you know, I'm not going to be having the same wardrobe in the next scene because there's going to be somehow it's going to get lost. So I just took it home every night. I took the wardrobe all home and I packed it away in the closet and locked it. And then next day, and that way I prevented it. But later on, we'd get triplicates, but I never did get a triplicate for ponchos and things like that.
But then it's your real poncho. I mean, you're wearing. There's only one. It's the real thing. That's your.
Yeah, there's only one.
Yeah.
It's only one in the world now. Makes it more valuable. But
Clint, to pick up on this, though, your actors, and particularly Bradley Cooper, and what he's wearing. Obviously, some of this is what is the regular outfits of the soldiers. But sure, the choice of wearing the hats, the kind of caps that he wears, and also just your wardrobe, your costume decisions. How did you make them on this picture?
I think it answers Wes's question. Just every actor is different. Some of them love to fiddle, like you're saying. They got the thing here, no, it goes there, no. And you go, okay, I got one of these guys. You're in a monologue, so I'm going to be the Brian Williams of the day. See, I'm going to just fudge it a little bit, you know. I'll kind of go along with the BS, and then you make the guy feel good, and then whatever psychology you're using to make the actor feel good. But it's you want it the way you want it. Now, if it's going downward instead of upward, I don't know what I'd do. I mean, other than a mismatch, I'd probably just say, well, okay, suit yourself.
Yeah.
But it depends. It depends on the actor. In the case of a sniper, Bradley Cooper is one of these guys who's he studies his part really well, and he would not come in not dressed right, and so there'd never be a mismatch. But with other people, you have to do it differently. So you're kind of amateur psychologist. You kind of you have to dance around with them a little. Like you mentioned Fred Astaire, that's a good... All directors have to be like that.
Yeah. In terms of his portraying Chris Kyle, I assume there were lots of photographs of him, because I am actually interested in the sort of the headgear that he wears, because there's a bunch of, even in the sequence we just saw, that shot, he's got the black cap on, and I'm interested, was this all reflective of Kyle, or was it also choices that you two were making specifically for the film?
No, well, we went down to visit the Mrs. Kyle, Taya, and we visited. She gave him all the stuff. She says, "Here's his hats, here's his things and stuff." So we took a lot of things right out of the closet and used them that were actually Chris's. And then he, you just look at pictures and stuff, and you get an idea. And we had also some Navy SEALs actual on the picture who were playing themselves, and they'd be constantly giving you corrections of how to frame everything.
For the Iraqis, particularly for the look of Mustafa, he dresses, literally, there's a sequence, or at least 2 times, when we watch him get prepared.
Right.
In the choice of what he was going to wear, how did that evolve?
Well, that evolved. We just, Deborah Hopper, who was the wardrobe, the chief of wardrobe, she would bring different ideas, and I said, with him, we'll wear something that is very Arabic, but make him a little conscious of his wardrobe. Maybe he's a little more conscious of the way he looks. He's a very nice-looking guy, so we had him have a beautiful wife, and that was our way of showing that every side has its own point of view, kind of. But the funny thing about movies, you can intellectualize on them all, but there's no rule. Every movie has its own life, and every director has his own style. This would be a great example of that. But it's a very appealing style, and so I hope he never changes it.
When you did make this decision, I want to pursue this one more moment because it's actually part of the idea when he wraps his head up before he goes out to do his job. Did that was that part of the story and you look for the appropriate scarf, or did the wardrobe costume determine, oh, let's do that?
No, I think the actor thought of the idea of doing that. But once he was fitted for it, I think he got over there and decided he thought it would be a good thing, and so I left him alone with it.
Got it.
If it had looked odd, or if he did it in the front instead of the back the next time, I would probably get finicky about it, but I try to give everybody a chance to live in the role. But if you like you're talking about total mismatch, if it's here and it's not there, then it's going to look funny every time you cut back. It's going to look funny. It's like the old having a cork in a wine bottle and then having it out on this side and then in on that side, and boy, it's just jumping all over the place.
Right.
Everybody here has had that experience.
Clint, there's an evolution in terms of, I think, the skulls that start to get put on the uniforms because of Chris's history. Can you talk about that?
Well, that was a Punisher. It's a animated cartoon that they adopted. The SEAL Team 3 adopted as their symbol. And everything was accurate. Everything in there was accurate the way it was, because it hasn't been so long. But you do have, if you're doing a fictional story, it's one thing, and if you're doing the real deal, mimicking the real deal, then you have to make sure it's
accurate.
Cool.
Got it. Thanks, Clint. Morten, again, you've got 3 different time zones, and so this is really period costume. How did the choices evolve for you and your actors? And were there challenges?
Yeah. First of all, I can really relate to the story, like how important the wardrobe is for the actors and the character. I mean, I don't know if it's something with British actors that they were very concerned about the wardrobe, and I was lucky enough to have rehearsals, so we had a lot of back and forth with different wardrobes, and it was. I mean, we had to. It was very limited in a way because it's like, especially in the 1940s. I mean, every suit looks the same, and they wore sort of like the same kind of shirts, and they were knitwear. So we had to decide on sort of like same thing. Try to give them a little bit of color range, and then try to decide, who was the most close, who was the most elegant, who was the more open, who the youngest, the most playful, and try to give them sort of like try to make the diversity between it sort of more or less the same. The biggest discussion we had was things like Benedict's teeth. I mean, he wanted to transform as much as possible. I think some actors want to have something physical change with them. I mean, be it with the wardrobe or the hair or prosthetic or something like that, just so they can feel different. And I had a bad experience with it. That once with an actor who we had a lot of problem with him slurring his dialogue because he had prosthetics. So I didn't want it, and he insisted on it and said, no one knows Alan Turing's teeth, how they look like. Nobody will care. But we ended up doing it because it was important for him to just feel that there was something that it wasn't him anymore. It was something physical that he was changed in a way. So, and it was the right choice. We did the same with the young actor, and that was a horrible mistake. So I took it out immediately because he had problems with it, and it didn't make any sense. So like it's the same thing. Every actor is different in this approach. I mean, how for some they don't matter. You can just put them on something and they perform, and somebody needs to feel that what they have on is sort of like reflects everything about the character, and it changes their performance a lot.
Was there any particular piece of costume that really was a challenge just to deal with? Even
I mean, the challenge was actually Sherborne School. I think every private school in England has uniform, and we for some reason picked a time period in a school that didn't have uniform, which was really annoying. They actually wore suits, their own private suits. There was no uniform at that school, so we had to invent it, and then we found out that they, on some occasion, when there was sports arrangement, they had this. So we actually made something out of their sport uniform.
Mark Strong, I believe, who plays the MI6.
Yeah.
There's a style of that character, I mean, visual style of that character that seems to even be somewhat spoken to by his costume.
Mark Strong. I mean, he's this, his character is he's the smart one, the one who always has the answers for everything, the puppet master behind everything, and we play with sort of like the elegant, British spy master a little bit. So he was like the fun part. The rest we had to every ugly knitwear in Britain, I think we had, so we could try that on, and that was very important with Kira. I mean, she said the only problem, don't make me glamorous. That was the only thing she said. So we found a cardigan. It was really ugly. We and you find that one piece of wardrobe. We said, this is the character. This is sort of like this would be the character's favorite piece of clothing. And then you sort of like build the character around that, actually, in many ways.
In all this pre-production process, well, it's also true in production, but here, to some degree, because there's so many unanswered questions, stress may be emphasized. I'm interested in how you all deal with stress. How do you deal with stress?
Drugs. No. It's funny that when I was doing that, remember once I have an actor who wants to use a primer color, and there's an only condition you will never see a primary color in my films. I hate them in the screen. Or you will never see a green tree in my films. Never. I hate green trees. I don't know why, but I will never have one green tree.
They're going to have a conversation with you later.
Yes, I know. But I can't. When I see a green tree, I have to cut it. Or I have to frame it. I don't know why. But it once was a big discussion about the primary color. I said there's no way in my life a film will have a primary color in a wardrobe. I don't know why, because it pump up for me, and it's when I see a beat, I cannot stand it. So there's actors that maybe in this case that you were talking about, the purple, maybe this guy has a purple reaction from his childhood, or maybe the nanny hit him with a purple something. But I have reactions to. So anyway, it's funny, those are stressful kind of things. But I think that the stress is a condition of our job. I think there's no I always traumatize when some friends has worked in films, and I said, how it goes? And I said, it was fantastic, big lunches, beautiful wine, everybody was laughing, was fantastic. And you see the film, and it's a disaster. So in a way, I'm terrified that if I'm kind of relaxing a little bit, I'm saying, I'm doing a shit here. So, I mean, there's something I should be stressed. So suddenly, for me, has become a little condition to be aware that what you will not achieve in that 8 hours or 10 or 2 hours, whatever, you will net it. So I think always something goes wrong in our work. I mean, it's a human condition that so depending on so many other people that normally something will go wrong or can be better. So once you are in that state of mind, always the stress. But at the same time, to be aware of that, in a way, the stress can be a good trigger, trigger some good things. So I think the manage of that is very important. I personally has found in meditation some relief. So, I mean, I think that when my flow of thoughts and feelings are a little bit overwhelming and is driven me to things or sides of me that I don't want or I don't like or doesn't have any productive kind of things, in a way to observe them, in a way has been something that I have been benefit from. It's a benign kind of habit that I have delivered, and it has been useful to not get into the madness of the amount of things that you have to decide every day, and many of those decisions will be never again back, and they will have a consequence. So all those kind of compulsive or meticulous fears of things that could have been better, I think has been a release for me to find that discipline.
In the meditation for you, is this a daily, or was this?
Yeah.
It is a daily. And will you start or end or your day or both?
I try to I start the day always, and when I can and I'm not exhausted, I try to do it at the end of the day And I think for me has been very helpful, in a way to put perspective, and in a way, again, seeing, in the side of the river, to see the river, how trashy your river are full of, plastic, and say, wow, this is fucking, the flow of things are bad. But you observe it, and that has helped. But always, I think, is a condition. I think it's impossible to set or to direct the film in a zen state. I think it's, I don't know if somebody achieve that, but it will be the goal. So, I mean, I think that, and in that sense, for me, it's interesting that the filmmaking is a territory with probably, if life is about spiritual growing in a way, when you have surrounded by so many humans and there's so many interactions, that you can really grow, you know what I mean, psychologically, spiritually, to, in a way, learn from all this experience and be a better person. And in a way, I think a film is a medium for that. I think that's the expression of film at the end.
I got it.
And that's, I think, the meaning of filmmaking for me. So in a way, my personal experience is that. And sometimes I go back, sometimes I move forward a little bit. But it's a beautiful territory to explore how to behave under stress. Mm-hmm. Because it's the toughest one. I think.
Got it. Well spoken. Mm-hmm. Well spoken. Rick, what do you do with stress?
This is fascinating for us because we never know how other directors work or who you are. You can't help but bring yourself to it. I don't really have any stress. I don't have much stress. This is more stressful for me than making a movie.
Got it. And is that? But is that because it's a public sort of process here, and making a movie is more intimate?
Yeah, just confident control. Yeah, I always wanted early on. I think I felt pressure on some of my first films, and I realized it was just because I didn't know what I was doing. I was still kind of learning so much, and I just wanted it to be a normal part of life. I think I knew psychologically I wanted to make a lot of movies in my life. I felt I had a lot to make, and I wanted it to always be a good experience. And I swear I try to feel like I'm in the right. I mean, for a movie to be getting made, to get the financing, to get the right cast, the planets have to have lined up pretty well just to get there. So I want to continue that feeling and feel like we're all in the right place, we're all here by choice, we're doing this at the right time, and I want good things to happen because of that. So I just kind of, I don't think about it too consciously, but I just want to feel like things are going our way, and you have to work very hard and consistently and constantly, but that you'll just make a lot more right choices than wrong choices, and it'll go the only direction it should go. So that's kind of.
So, and I understand this, and so because that's sort of accepting that if you will, this collaboration between sort of fate and what's going to happen and your energies, and they weave together, and that's the way it's supposed to happen. Mm-hmm. There are moments, but just as Alejandro said, there are moments like when you were going to that location and suddenly you can't shoot.
And it turned out better. Thank you, Ted Cruz. Yeah, it was like we did, So you just think like, okay, the world's telling me something here. Maybe it's for the better. You know, you try to look at it that way, turn things around. You know. So.
I got it. Well spoken. Well, this is good for me, guys.
Is it?
Personally.
I don't know.
I've just got two of you, and already I'm feeling I have some things to do with my stress. I'm getting ready for it. Wes, what do you do with stress?
Well, I think, I was going to say that I think I'm sitting between two of the least stressed film directors of all time.
I think that's why I put you there, Wes.
I think, I'm probably a little more like Alejandro in this. I used to, the first movies I did, I felt very confident and comfortable on the sets, and I've gotten much less confident and relaxed over the years. And Owen Wilson, Owen and I went to school together. We've done we've known each other many years. And Owen was on this movie. He had a small role in this new movie. And Owen was saying, "You're worse than I've ever seen you." Why is that? Everything's fine. Yeah. I think it's. But I think maybe it's partly because I now try to be more efficient, and I get a little more, anxious about let's keep this moving. I want to be fast and get it done. And I do think, I do say to myself, a simple thing, it's going to be over eventually. Whatever happens, it's only going to go on so long.
Yeah, you can always tell yourself that.
I think, I've tried to do a thing. I like to have a short day of shooting, they have a thing, French hours, but, you can't, you're not in France. Maybe they don't want to do French hours in other countries. I tried to do a thing which relates to what you said. I tried to lead a movement to ban lunch. And I've never been able to sell it.
Yeah, crews don't like that.
Yeah. No.
Getting off early, they want a lunch.
Yeah, I think let's just shoot and we'll wrap early. And my thing was, on the last one, soup. If we had soup, thermoses of soup brought to the set, and you're doing something, he's drinking soup, but it all keeps going. But I find like a grip, for instance. He told me, I want a steak.
Yeah.
So, and he's burning a different level of calories and everything during it. But
so I get how stress is working for you because it's happening. But how do you sort of recognize it, and what do you do with it?
Nothing. I think, I will say, on this last one, we had a nice arrangement, which was we got this little hotel where we all lived together, the cast and the director of photography, production designer, Milena, the whole group. We had a little hotel, and it didn't have a restaurant, but it had a breakfast kitchen, and we brought another person that we met in Italy to come cook there, and every night we all had dinner together, and everybody did come to dinner every night, and it really was. Well, I feel like I feel like one thing I do tend to see is when the day is over, I tend to not feel. I'm looking forward to dinner. We all get together. Sometimes we talk about what we've been doing or whatever it is, but it's the end of the day is quite relaxing. It's the tension is from the moment I wake up right before the alarm goes off, through to when we call it a day. That's the less relaxing part.
Fair enough.
Clint?
What? Well, stress.
Stress, yeah, stress.
Stress is a very manageable thing if you do it correctly. But I try to eliminate, and it's just over the years, over a lot of years, the things that I didn't like on sets that other directors would do, or assistant directors yelling at the top of their lungs, or bells going off on sound stages sometimes when people want to ring a bell and all this stuff. And I immediately take all that stuff out. And the assistant director doesn't do anything except, he organizes everything and does a tremendous amount of work. But I just don't let the people know when the camera's going half the times. I have a deal with the camera operator, and I just go like that. And I say roll, and then so we're rolling, and they're just talking about the real estate sale or something like that. And then you just kind of get into it and say, okay, and I never use action, because action used to rattle the horses when I did the Rawhide series. The horses, you'd yell action, and the horses go every direction. and so I went to a director one time, and I said, why don't you change the name? Why don't you just say go, or just wave? And we're all intelligent people. We can see you wave. And we just come in and ride the horses in, and everything's quiet. I just still do that. I never use action. I just never use cut. I just say, okay, when you're ready, when you're ready now. And unless it's an intense scene or something, now you try to kind of get everybody when they're a little up and grinding. But by and large, if it's a scene, you give the actors a chance to kind of, and then you go. But if you're sitting there like that, you're intense, unless it's a scene that really calls for that, and then the actor will build up that tension within them and use it accordingly. But the main thing is to keep a set quiet and just be ready to shoot at all times. So everybody has radios. And I once went to a White House meeting, and I saw the Secret Service they're talking, and the president was talking. I can't even remember who the president was, but I remember that guys were all going, and didn't hear anything. I said, gee, if they can do that, why can't we, and with all the technology we have here in this business, do that? So we closed off all the radios so that everybody can talk while we're shooting. Actually, the assistant director can talk to the other assistant director and say, okay, now do this, now do that. But it's all very sotto voce. And it makes for a faster day. It makes it easy. I find the actors perform much better that way. And even experienced actors seem to appreciate that. Guys that you think would be able to do with no problem at all,
For you personally, looking at sort of the three stages of filmmaking, pre-production, the shoot itself, post-production, are any of those three more stressful for you?
Stressful?
Stressful for you, in terms of just looking at those three stages.
Well, post-production is stressful if you found out you haven't covered things properly. I mean, there's a lot of ways to get stress in the business, but, I mean, everybody's maybe you were kind of hitting it, as you get older, you get more stressful. But you should get less stressful. Really, shouldn't you?
Yeah.
But... You got to have those Slurpees on the set.
But Clint, now...
The soup.
One of the things I sometimes ask directors is, what advice would you give another director? Well, if you're going to give Wes some advice to get less stressful, what advice are you going to give?
And the meditation I did that Alejandro was talking about is very good. If you have a system for that, some people do. Some people have some sort of a meditation deal, and that just is good for their personal life. But if you have something bad going on in your personal life, of course, it's going to be tough to come into the set every day anyway. Though it may be a relief, who knows?
Movies is a relief. How about for you, Morten?
I mean, I want to start doing that. No yelling at a set. That sounds wonderful. To be quite honest, it's no, and it's funny you said about action. In Scandinavia, you never say action. You say imagery, you say please, which I actually kind of like. I never liked the action either myself. In German they do the same. They say bitte.
Which is
And
please, huh?
yeah, it's kind of so nice. So we
That's
always
kind of intelligent.
Yeah, we're saying to the actors, it's never the AD who says it, it's the director who says it, and he says, please, before everybody starts to act. So it's, which I always love, because it's sort of like it's more intimate. And
The actor turns and says, after you.
yeah, exactly. I should. But it's, so maybe I'll start that. I think it's translated over to English and it's not doing the action. But no, I don't know. I also agree with Alejandro. I don't know if it's a personal thing, but if it goes too well, I always think what's wrong. Which is if you have a day and everything goes easy and you're ahead of schedule or whatever, it's always like that. This hasn't been complicated enough. I haven't pushed this enough. I haven't demanded enough. I got to do something different. So I think it's at some stress level. I think is good at some anxiety. I mean, you have to have it in some way to really push yourself. But it's sort of like shooting is sort of like the most. It's the thing that which is the hardest, the most terrifying thing, and also the most enjoyable at the same time. So it's you go up and down like this the whole day, which is great, and especially in the morning, blocking.
He's a picture postcard for stress.
No, but it is. Yeah. But I find that it's I don't know how to deal with it, because it's I try not to be very self-conscious at all. I think it's hard to be very self-conscious because you focus so much on what goes on with your actors, with your set, whatever. So. And also I think that I try to give a lot of energy. I mean, I get a lot of. I'm always told to be quiet behind the monitor, because I cry and I scream and I jump up and down and I do a lot of things. It's sort of like been my thing to sort of like give. I mean, it's very easy to see what I feel about a take. During, it's being behind the monitor. If it's good, I, scream immediately, or if it's bad, I take something off and walk away and come back again, and something's wrong. And it's something. I mean, I find that it works because it's sort of like you feed other people, and you sort of like give that. So I mean, some of the stress I need to have. I think it's important to have.
I'm interested in the question for all of you, but it's almost just a process question. Because at one time, when there were no monitors, the director, she would put herself next to the lens, because that was the only, you wanted to be close to the lens to see what the lens got and also to feel what the actors are doing. In the world we live in now, monitors are everywhere and anywhere. Where are you each? Most of the day, where are you? Are you next to the monitor? Do you go back and forth between the monitor and the lens? Where are you, Morten?
I'm always by a monitor, but I try to have either small monitor as much as I can, especially when you're working. So I love to be really close to the actors. So I carry around a monitor a lot, and especially when we block and rehearse with the camera, to really be there and talk, and then. And then after taking out, I might sit down behind the bigger monitor, But I always wanted to be as close as possible. It's one of my constant demands is to put the monitor as close to the actor as possible. So, especially so I don't have to yell. But I think that's I want them to sort of like get my reaction immediately after they've done something, after a take. It's not be sort of like the focus puller or whatever is the first guy that they have to read up. Did I do good? How did I do?
Got it. Clint, where are you in relationship?
Well, I use a very small monitor, a hand monitor, which I carry around, and I just use that so I don't have to look through the camera all the time. He puts a 50 millimeter, a 2-inch lens or a 3-inch lens or whatever. You just kind of go, look, and you just can kind of concur. But when the scene's going, I'm watching the actors. And I try to stay with the actors, depending on the actors. Some actors like a little distance. Some actors like you to be. Bradley likes you right there with him, for instance. He likes to, he likes to feed off the energy. what energy I have.
You're groping here now. Come on.
Everything is done in small increments. But other actors, I personally don't mind distance. When I was acting back in the day, if the director's close, that's fine. If he's far, it's fine. I prefer him actually not to be too close because you're trying to interact with other actors and you don't necessarily want to have a lot of people stumbling around in the background. But it just depends. But I don't have a video village. I don't care about that. I think those are distracting, and they build a committee. And the committee gets larger every day. First, maybe it's yourself and the assistant directors, and then it becomes everybody, and pretty soon everybody's back there, and nobody's on the set, and it becomes kind of lonely.
Wes, where are you in relationship to the camera? And
well, I like to think of some actors. Some actors want. It's fun to have an actor who is sometimes that actor where you finish the shot, they look right to you and you're doing a thing together. But I also had a kind of a very good experience in terms of how I felt about the result of it. Many years ago with Gene Hackman, and I remember somewhere early on, I can't help but look at the monitor, but often what I want to do is look at the actor, and I remember in the middle of a take, Gene is doing this, and he says, I can see you frowning and moving around over there, and I'm like, okay, I'm going to set up a monitor. And I'll be over here. Yeah. You'll know where I am.
Well, Gene, I've worked with Gene, and the same thing. But he's so ready to go. He's so prepared that the first scene I ever did with him was with Morgan Freeman and Gene, both excellent actors. And I got about 2 lines into the scene, and I said, this is a mistake that this camera is not running right now. So I said, stop for a second. And I just go like this, get the thing, okay, now go ahead, you guys rehearse so much as you want. And I just followed him around. Yeah. But he's the kind of guy that loves to be left alone.
Yeah, he loves to be left alone. And he is the kind of guy where you take one. Wow.
Yeah.
That was great.
Yeah.
Yeah. The problem is if you say, wow, that was great. What about what we could do also? Then you'd start going downhill.
Yeah.
In terms of the reading.
No.
But not that he goes downhill. Just that what he actually really wants. What I feel like he wants to do is do it great immediately and move on. And he's somebody who you can do that.
Yeah, you can do that with him. So it's spoiled. So he gets annoyed when people are indecisive, and I've watched him with other directors, and he'll get really annoyed.
I'm aware of that.
He loves to give his best, but he doesn't mind correction if you get going and say no, I see it a little bit different. He'll go for that, but he doesn't like to have you experimenting on his
dabbling
time. Yeah.
in it.
I want to continue this conversation.
Sorry.
I like this. I am so delighted that you all are in conversation with each other. I think that's what we should be doing all the time. But I also, and it made me want to also ask the question to all the three of you, but I want to hear where you position yourself about how many takes you like to do. As we can see, some actors only want one, and I know, Clint, you're been on that world of not a lot of them, but I'm going to save this for a second because I just sort of want to know where you guys put yourselves in relationship to the camera and to monitors. Rick?
To me, it depends on the shot. If there's an elaborate camera move, I'll probably be, looking at a monitor. But if the camera's not moving, I'll be over near the camera just looking. Because the actors usually, when it's cut, they tend to look up, looking for you. At least mine do. We've rehearsed a lot, and I don't place any big emphasis on any one take. It's a process. We'll just keep going until we feel like we've exhausted it, or we're out of ideas. Things.
Now, I know that this was shot on film, and I believe you shot digital as well.
No,
never. Yeah. So, but one of the things.
But on other movies you've done digital.
Oh yeah, I have.
That's what I meant.
Other movies,
yeah.
certainly.
So one of the things that digital allows for is literally not saying, if you will, cut or stop or whatever the word is, because you're not quote wasting film. And for some directors now, I've noticed that they will not say cut and continue working with the actors on the same shot or whatever's going on. Do you find yourself doing anything like that as it's developing?
I did that on film, just like let's just go right into another take. Again, it depends on the shot. If the camera's not, you don't have to reset the camera or something. So I don't think not much different for me. I want to be prepared, I don't want to just let the cameras roll and figure out what the hell we're doing. That we should have done that already.
And I want to talk a little about the rehearsal, but I've got it. And Alejandro, where you place yourself?
It's funny. I think it has been depending in each film. Each film has been in different places, and it has to do a little bit with the way that has been shot and the actors, as they were saying. There's different actors that demand. Like, I will say that in a more let's say in 21 Grams on Amores Perros, that it was much more conventional shooting, that master or over-the-shoulder close-up, that you can be very close to your actors because you are doing a close-up, so it's here and you are with a little monitor and watching that. And it's fragmented, so every set up you can position yourself depending in the scene. In Babel, for example, that was the first film that I did a lot of non-actor scenes. I remember that I was doing what Clint was saying, that a lot of it was still, because in the moment that they were conscious, they were shooting, they were terrible. In the moment that you were saying, we're not shooting, they were the best. So I was doing that trick of running camera and pretending that I was talking to them, but that Rodrigo was shooting. So it was another kind of trick, depending in that source. Funny enough, in this mode of Birdman, it has been another story. I have to redefine a little bit a lot of things for me that sometimes are challenging because the takes are so long and has to be so rehearsed and meticulously precise, because literally you are editing at the same time and everything. So one beat that is late, it just ruined the whole thing. And nobody can be around because sometimes it's 300 degrees shots that is all around. So everybody has to be walking around, or you have to be in another room, and you cannot be basically close to the actors at all. And so that's imply another kind of thing, that you have to be like in a theater, rehearse very close, define every kind of camera movement, every lighting, and everybody is acting because the audio guy, the set decorator, everything is moving live, and so everything is performance. So I have to be sometimes very far away, because once the thing, everybody has to be what they have to do, and I cannot be in the way of nobody. So that has been a kind of little new mode for me. The same what we are doing now in the exteriors, the same. It's very difficult to find sometimes where the crew will be, because sometimes we go very long and again. And that's another kind of territory that is extreme. And it's a little bit stressful because of that, because any fucking thing that goes is like, oh my God, it's like you fail the editing and it will be forever, but you have to start again. That's why I make it a little bit more challenging and obligate you to be far away. So I think it depends.
What's the first thing you do when you arrive on the set? What's the first thing you do?
Pray.
Did I hear the word pray? And then what's next?
No, I think what I do the first is to have a coffee. Actually, so, that's the first thing, to shake it up, and I try to. I have some cards that I do, and those cards that I do are cards that are made in months in advance, where I revise my objectives of each scene, and I try just to be as clear as possible. Because I know that since the first 3 minutes that somebody knocked the door, it will come with problems. You know what I mean? Problems that will take me away from what really we are doing that day. Financial, locations, sickness, whatever. Exactly. So I try to really just be very clear in what the scene is about, what the objective of that scene, where we come from, where we are going, just to, what is the objective of this act. So just to be just clear that when I'm in there with what is important, I'm clear, and then I can battle. So that's what.
And this card includes, as you just said, the objective of the scene, where it came from, where it's going. Also, to some degree, what's going on with the characters as well.
Yeah, I have a very kind of I have a design of my cards, and they have all those things that I prepare when I'm doing the script or what I rehearsing. I try to understand that clearly, and maybe I throw them away. It's just that for me it was important to understand what was about everything in the beginning before I suddenly become another person. And that is suddenly forgotten, or because I changed, or because somebody influenced me, or because I forgot in the middle of things, and then I screwed the whole thing, and I said, I didn't remember what this was about, and I forgot the seed of the whole thing, which is, for me, when you were saying what is the most pleasurable thing, for me, it's funny, pre-production is beautiful for me. So it's when I'm in the best state of mind, everything is possible, then is when I can see everything clear. And post-production is heaven. So for me, to be in the editing room or to be in the music room or to be, I feel super comfortable. For me, hell in a way that is the most stressful time is production, because as Clint said, something that you don't get there, you will never get it in life. In pre-production, everything is a dream. In post-production, whatever, if you, in a way, nail something, you are sculpting and you have a lot of possibility, infinite. So in a way, that's what I do when I arrive. It's just to remember that thing.
Rick, over this 12-year period, did it change when you would arrive on set?
No. Oh, can I share something? You mentioned arriving on set, and maybe it's a tip, Wes. Going back to the stress thing. You know what I do every day? I don't meditate, but if I'm driving to the set or arriving on the way there, I always try to find someone like in a car next to me or like a guy with a hard hat on, who's going to work. He's got a real job, And I just think, I used to be an offshore oil worker, and I go like, okay, that's the real world. Thank God I'm able just to have the opportunity to do what I'm going to do this day. No matter what the hell is going on, no matter what these problems are going to be, I just have to take a moment and go, there's nowhere else I'd rather be. I'm so damn lucky, to get to have this day that's coming up. I try to look at it that way, just to kind of go, okay, and now you arrive at set and you go, okay, who's not here, who has a black eye, what's going on, let's just start dealing with it. So I just start talking to the actors as soon as I can, or just get on the set, just start feeling it.
And when in the talk with the actors, will you actually, and particularly on this movie, will you, and I realize it's short time, will you do some rehearsing before you actually will shoot, or did you not?
No, we've already rehearsed.
Okay.
Yeah, so I know what we're doing, and we know what the challenges and the goals are for the day. So I just kind of want to see where they're at. Maybe we've had some new ideas. We woke up this morning with a few ideas. I think for me, shooting is dialing in about the last 3 to 5% of the scene, what it's going to be. So just those last little ideas, even though I kind of over-rehearse quite often, I always assure the actor we're not going to leave it here. If the scene's totally working, we'll quit rehearsing it so much. But it's the scenes that I still think there's a little new something to discover. And I often find that in that early morning conversation, or just, maybe the first take, that last little idea, line or a joke, or, something. It just depends on the scene. So I'm still kind of dialing in the final bits. And that's not just the performances, but maybe, how we're going to shoot it, too. I used to stay up all night planning out every shot. Now I'm more like, I've just been thinking my way through it, so I'll just start talking to, my camera guys.
When they were younger, Eller, and your daughter, and therefore less experienced to do all of this, and you're working with, actors who are incredibly experienced, how did you blend that rehearsal time with them in those parts, when they were younger? I get it when they were older, but...
Yeah, I don't know. I never felt any different. I mean, when you're working with really young people, it's more of a manipulation, obviously, but I always just talk to them like I would anyone and just be real upfront about what we're trying to do, and here's the scene, and try to have fun with it. And it just depends on what it is.
So when your daughter was singing and irritating him when he was on the bunk bed and he throws the pillow, and then there's this moment, by the way, that's just devastating for me when Mom comes in and she suddenly pretends that she's the one that was crying.
Yeah.
Do you remember this evolution of that scene? Or
we rehearsed it a lot and talked about that shift. And she was able to do it. Well, she's my daughter. I know her really well, and I've seen that shift, So I'm like, okay, when the door flies open, just, do that. And yeah, it was kind of easy. She enjoyed it. It was fun. So she didn't know that Britney Spears song, really. She was, she had rehearsed that a lot.
She had to learn that.
A friend of hers kind of helped her with the choreography of that. We worked on it. You got a couple of weeks to kind of work on that. So it was fun.
Yeah, I got it. I like that moment. Wes, for you, what's the first thing you do when you're out on set? On this particular picture?
On this picture, yeah. Well, I like the thing that Rick is saying about how you say who's not here or who's got a black eye, because it reminds me of something. Yeah, something. There's something. Some surprise might be there, but I haven't had an interesting thing, which is twice over the years, twice I've gotten the news on the set. This actor has shaved off his mustache.
Yeah, that happens.
That's happened. You're like, how? What happened? And I had two things. And one of them was the actor had told me the thing that is hard to accept, which is I was trimming it, and then I trimmed some more, and then it was changing, and then I just took it off.
But the matching.
But the other time it happened, he said he had a similar thing, and then he said, but it actually happened last week. I've been wearing a fake for all these days. I was like, son of a bitch. Then what are you gonna say? I never noticed. It was. It's hard to say. It's better if it's real. If I didn't notice.
Really. But it seems like you took advantage of the whole idea, because doesn't Zero actually paint on his mustache at one moment?
Yeah, he draws on his mustache. Yeah, that's an easier way to do it.
On camera. What happens when you get to the set? What's the first thing you do?
I can't think of if I have any ritual or anything like that when I get to the set. Usually, I just try to be shooting as quick as possible, I don't really like to have any kind of powwow or anything. I just like to, okay, where do we leave it? Everything's all ready, and hopefully we just get right into it. That's what I hope for.
And will you then just, if you're doing right away, this is what we're about to do, will you rehearse that moment? Or, some moments I'm sure you have to, like the punches that we just saw, but others maybe not. I'm just interested in that process for you on the day.
Well, one thing is the first movie that I did, we had made a little short film, and in fact, that's when we first met, was at that time, we made this short, and then James L. Brooks and Polly Platt, they helped us to make this into a feature film. But I never, I wasn't on a movie set before that. I was on the set of our short, and then we were doing our thing. And I did not have the experience of how it's normally done. And I remember we had a day we had, James Caan. It was just us, our group of friends. But at a certain point in the story, this mentor character arrives in the story, and he was Jimmy Caan was playing this, and I remember he was amused, and he was perfectly comfortable with it. But he started telling me all the things that he said that you do wrong in a gentle way, that this is not considered how it would normally be done, and he was happy to accommodate. But one was, he said, just so you know, usually you get the actors together and they rehearse the thing, and then they go and they might get some makeup or some wardrobe things, and then you set up the shot and you light it, and then they come back and you film it. And I thought, wow, I never heard of that. Because we had literally always done it where we set up everything, bring the actors in the night, show them where they are. Here's what we've got. Can you guys make this work? So I shifted more towards the Jimmy Caan method, which is traditional. Traditional system over the years.
When you're setting up some of the comics, I mean, there's a part of me that felt so much that you were carrying on a real tradition. I mean, I felt that I was seeing something from the best images of black and white slapstick comedies from the 20s. I mean, I just felt some of these scenes were evolving that way. Were you conscious of that yourself? Are those some of the influences for you?
Well, I mean, for this movie, the Lubitsch movies and the real 30s. The thing I think of is sort of the kind of movies that are set in Poland or
like
Czechoslovakia
right.
that are made in Burbank. That was kind of the tradition, I think. That we were trying to join. But then, oddly, we went to Germany to do it.
Clint, when you arrive on set, what's the first thing that you do? When you're arriving on set, first thing?
I do the same thing as Wes. I just go in and start shooting. And if we're picking up from the night before or the day before, which is rarely, usually I like to finish a sequence at the end of the day if I can, and then start a new sequence and just talk to the actors, say, well, let's talk, let's see what you want to do here. And you walk over and say, and you just take it. And then if they say, well, it would work better maybe if you came over a little further here because the camera, the lighting, and you give them all that stuff. If you get an actor who is very conscious of their looks, you want to tell them how the light is shading their face in a certain way. And they kind of go. I did that to an actor once who was kept being contrary to everything I'd suggest. So finally, I had to tell him to stand in front of this window here and let the light draw through. And I gave him all this pseudo crap, and he sort of bought into it, and it worked out fine. But you do have to be sort of an amateur shrink sometimes with actors. But by and large, everybody wants to accomplish the same thing, and I just try to make it. And if I get a good setup and it's fairly easy, I'll say let's just run it, and I'll just. And get the insulate so they don't really know and they don't feel the pressure of, okay, now we go, here's the bell, here's the go, we have to come out of the shoot. You just get in there and just let it go. And it doesn't work a lot of times, but it does work. Or parts of it might work. Like you were suggesting, you get little parts of certain takes that are really superior. And from an actor's standpoint, you can do some amazing things. Or with kids especially, we were talking about that one take stuff. If you get kids especially, you don't want to let them know the camera's been going because they've had the stage mother working them all night. Yeah. And they come back and they are saying everything just like this. And you go, gee, Dolly, how are you? And you go, oh, Jesus, this is going to be so bad. And how do you break all that down? So you kind of just fool them. You just start talking, let them talk among themselves, playing. And sometimes I'll just photograph them when they're playing. Or they don't even know they're...
Is that similar to, for example, the scene with the dog here?
On this picture here, that for instance, when Bradley is talking to the veteran in the auto shop, he has his son with him. Well, the son is an adorable kid, but he doesn't know anything about acting, so I just put the camera on him, and then I just tell him, "You go play, do what you want, do how you do," and they do things, and I'd talk to Bradley and say, maybe might ask him about this or that or something, but everybody with kids, that's the only way you can do it, because I've had so many experiences where they come in and you can't undo it once it's ground in there.
Yeah, I know. The when you're doing an action sequence itself, or again looking at that last sequence where there's so much going on, there's so many of the Iraqis surrounding the building, there's so many setups in terms of, for those kind of sequences, in terms of when you're on the set for these things, do they get storyboarded? How do you work them out?
No, sometimes you storyboard ideas, but for your own pleasure. But I just say, come on, let's come in here, then come on over here, and there's a good place to set up over here for the shot. You're supposed to be shooting up this street. If that doesn't, and then that doesn't, you discover that was a mistake, so you have to come over and just grab stuff, grab something, get on it, and let the actors let the actors improvise, and let them think like it's happening. And if you tell them everything, then it's going to be mechanical. You want to put this there or there, And a lot of people like to have that kind of detail, but I like to let them set that. And then we might have to match it. And then the actor has to step in and be able to match. But by and large, don't make it a big deal. I mean, it's going to be a big deal if it's a dramatic scene. But let the actor give you something and show you something. And if he can't show you, then you kind of come in and say, no, you give him all kinds of foul language or stuff or whatever you want to get him to go to inspired to do the scene. Not necessarily mimic you, but just, beat your head against the wall, whatever it takes to get going.
In pursuing this one more level, there's a sequence where the car is heading toward the soldiers, and it gets shot, and the driver gets shot, and he blows the car up. There are a whole bunch of shots to make this work, obviously, and there are lots of special effects to make this work. So in setting that stuff up, what's your process? Because that's more technical.
Well, I bring the car around the corner. And the car, get a good corner shot where it's coming down and then going away from us, and then get down and bring the car towards us, and then I drop back and probably tie it all up so it doesn't just look like an empty. So that you get your players in the foreground, and then come around and come right towards the players. Come towards the players as they're shooting, and then come around the car. Now you have to reset there because you're going to set off a tremendous explosion and blow the car completely apart. So you can't have people standing around with, with doors flying off and everything like that, because you're very dangerous. So those things you have to do kind of very specifically, or you might get somebody hurt. But so those guys are firing off a lot of ammo, even though it's blank ammo. There's a lot of stuff coming out of there, and it can be kind of tricky. And then we had to run into the building that one time, and the guys come out and they're shooting at the tank, and not the tank, but the vehicle with the .50 caliber on it, and you're blowing stuff up. It's you have to kind of put that together like a puzzle, but in scenes you can kind of let them unravel.
Got it.
Let them unravel themselves.
Morten, thank you, Clint. First thing in the morning.
Morning, coffee,
and then.
Morning.
Huh?
And then?
And then no, it's a little bit of the same thing. I mean, you want to know about the black eye and the shade of mustache, if there's anyone, and then I try and have a background. What I like is to be early and have the important time for me is trying to be on set really early before anybody brought in, and you have that moment of where you're left alone and you can feel the room, and you have your notes with me, and trying to remember, 5-6 months back, what was your, intention, what do you want with this, and then sit there and just feel a little bit. I mean, that's a lot of time, especially if there's a big blocking that's going to happen.
Well, like for example, the scene that we just saw, will you rehearse with your actors? And that is, I assume, scene you'd actually rehearsed before you started shooting, because I know you did have
that scene I didn't want to rehearse much. I mean, it's all different. To me, I love rehearsal. To me, I do a lot of stuff in rehearsal which I'm never going to shoot. And I also spend time in rehearsal to not shoot, but it's like, to me, I don't want to. It's scenes which are so emotional at the moment. I mean, you don't want it to be perfect at the rehearsal. To me, it's sort of like a bonding period, and I tried more technical, complicated things, and also things which are important for the actors to try out and during rehearsal, and that scene, I didn't want to and I put it as the last day of shooting on purpose, because which actually turned out to be kind of a problem, actually, because Benedict got so emotional. He's been living with this character for so long, and it struck him, everything he had to go through and the sort of like the injustice with him, and it overwhelmed him in many ways. So he couldn't stop crying. And it wasn't the character crying, it was Benedict crying. And you can see the difference. Mm-hmm. He wasn't there, and he couldn't control himself, because he said he felt this, he said, sorry, Morten, I can't stop, because he felt this incredible sadness. He's been with this character for so long, and sort of like fall in love with him, and he can so emphasize with everything that went on, and the tragedy of it. So it's sort of like become, we had to stop a lot and just give him time to gather himself, and it became a lot of it, because he was so overly emotional, sure. and it's kind of funny, because you could really see when it's the actor being emotional and not the character. Yeah. So that was a bit, but again, it's you have to make a lot of decisions. You have to sort of like feel where are things going to happen, where are we going to put them, where are you going to see, whether they feel lonely. And a lot of these things I like to sort of like try and feel. And the best way for me is to have someone sitting there and just be there in the room and think and have a cup of coffee and just look around. And there's a prop guy setting up the last props, and there's some activity going on. But that's very valuable for me, to just have that time and just try to absorb as much as possible.
2 more questions for you all. What ended up on the editing room floor? Post-production question for you, Morten.
The suicide. The death of the minute.
You actually shot it?
Yeah. Which I was 100% sure was going to be in the film, because it's, on paper, it's extremely emotional or whatever, but it felt redundant when we watched it. It felt like the movie stopped before. It's sort of like, he turned the lights off on the machine, and it felt melodramatic in many ways. It felt like something that wasn't needed. The whole thing was supposed to be bookend with the policeman arriving at the same shot. It was still raining, and now he arrives at the crime, at the break-in in the beginning, and now he arrives at the same place where he's killed himself. And also this is Suicide Apple, which you love. This is it's Apple with a bite off, and I shot it like the Apple logo, and said, oh, this is a great link. It's the man who invented computer science, and you end this shot with the Apple logo, and it turned into an Apple commercial. So I took it away immediately, but it's just those things that surprise you. You think that this is so smart. You feel very clever of coming up with these things, and then you see it in the edit, and it doesn't really work. It doesn't become emotional.
Great. Thank you, Morten. Thank you. Clint, anything end up on the editing floor?
Just one sequence that there was a sequence that I was told about, and it was in the book. And there was a sequence where he's back in civilization, back in our country, and he's out with his pickup truck, and he stops and gets some gas in this the town down in Texas, and 2 guys try to hijack his car. And they didn't realize that they picked the wrong person. And so these guys tried to do this thing, and there's a lady there, and she's working on her car, and this is all supposed to be true. And I've verified. In fact, I even talked to some SEALs that talked about it before. But what happens is the guy, he says, I'll get the key for you in the car, and he's being very cooperative. And the guys come around, and they come around. One comes to one side of the car, and one comes to the other, and he shoots through the thing, boom, boom, and he kills them both. And then the woman in the car drives off, and she's panicked. And this sequence supposed to have come down, and it's really a good sequence. I mean, it's very fun, but unfortunately, it's so Dirty Harry-esque that I thought, at this point, maybe we're going off in another direction. And even if it's true, and several people contested it, I think, in a magazine or something, but I've seen so many witnesses, or heard so many witnesses on it, but I thought, I'll leave this out.
Got it. Got it. Thanks, man. Wes, anything end up on the editing room floor?
I like it. That sounds like a good one, though.
It does?
It sounds like a scene from a Clint Eastwood movie.
Yeah.
Exactly. It was too much like, too much reflective of things.
I mean, because as soon as you say, these guys try to hijack him, you're like, oh, ho, ho.
Here we go.
Yeah.
What about for you, Wes? Anything on the editing floor?
I don't think on this one. I don't think I had anything. This one. It's not very long, particularly, and we didn't have a lot of spare change or anything to shoot anything we weren't so sure. But so it's I think it's pretty much what we shot more or less.
Go it. Rick?
Very little, believe it or not. Only a few scenes aren't in the movie. There was one. It was a transition between years 1 and 2. Because I'm having to connect these 12 moments in time, and it was a little too clever. Kind of what Morten was saying. It was something that was a little clever about it. Like, they've moved into a new apartment. He runs down the hallway. It's an empty apartment. And he comes through a door, and it's now furnished, and his hair's different. It's a year later, and the movie continues. So I was like, it always bugged me. I said, oh, that's kind of clever. Clever works once, right? It's kind of like, okay. So I got better at those transitions. But there it was in the movie for all those years. So that was between years 1 and 2, and I cut it out between years 11 and 12. Like 11 years later, I went, I can just cut that out of the movie. It's just like, boom, gone. So that was the one that, but I had to think about it for 10 years. But I was glad to be able to keep polishing, keep polishing. So that was good. That's the one. Yeah, but not much. Didn't shoot much.
It's fascinating.
Didn't cut much.
Considering all the story that you're telling.
Do you have movies that you look back on that you would cut things?
No,
or
I don't allow myself to think that way because.
Do you, Wes?
Well, I have one of them that I would take about 35 minutes or so out.
We're going to leave that.
Yeah, the answer.
We're going to leave it.
Cut the whole movie, maybe. But.
Alejandro, I'm going to be surprised if you actually said, "Oh yes, there's this entire sequence that is on the editing room floor because of the design of this movie."
Now I understand why Rick doesn't have any stress. 10 years to think about one comment.
Yeah, it was nice. I enjoyed the one time I had that,
Next time I'm
that
going to do my
schedule.
film in 12 years.
Yeah, I recommend it. I really do. It was wonderful. I'm usually the guy with 15 days, 23 days, but I like the 4,000 days. I used it. Yeah.
Anything on the editing floor?
No, so, I mean that was a challenge.
I wouldn't think anything.
No, but the thing is that everyone was ensembled to the other. I mean, I couldn't take nothing. I mean, in a way, time and space is literally the blood of cinema. So, I mean, the juxtaposition of that. So that fragmentation is what we do, right? We play that's that fiction blood. Reality is not like that, and this film was not like that. So, I mean, in a way, the continuous thing, it's literally to don't count with those tools, which are the tools that normally you are used to, and that you can make decisions later. And in this case, I knew that if any of those scenes will be bad, I will have to live with them forever, and one single thing that will not work, I will have to just accept it. So that was a little bit the stressful thing.
So everything then, in terms of every transition, because there are a bunch of transitions that in order to accomplish this, had to be preconceived.
Absolutely. And I couldn't take or manipulate or edit nothing, because it's in a spaghetti. You cannot serve a chopped spaghetti. It will be horrible. So it's like a beautiful spaghetti that has to be, and I couldn't take any piece because then it will not make sense. I mean, it collapsed. That's why I always send the actors this tightrope guy, because it was that. We were walking in that line, and if one of us fall or anything is wrong, it will be I cannot manipulate nothing. I cannot make after decisions.
But that sounds like, the walking a tightrope gives us an enormous amount of tension for your actors, and I know you didn't want that, so...
No, I wanted that.
No, so speak to it for a second. No, but actually, in the actual shoot.
It just happened, I discovered one thing that for me was a discovery that I'm trying to apply it now. there's actors that are inside out or outside in. Sometimes you have to feed them with what kind of wine he like, if he like cold wine or, every detail of the life of somebody, and they use that and then internalize and then they come out. Or the other ones that are outside in, which are more instinctual. You smell, see the clothes and say, okay, I got it. I know who this guy is. See the apartment. Or there's a guy that really wants to rehearse a lot or not. I respect every method. What I discovered in this method, that it was not a choice, it was a discovery in a way, is that because this way that I was approaching the film, it was absolutely needed to rehearse profoundly, deeply, but more than anything, meticulously. So, it was not a rehearsal like a blocking and find the, no. It was, I need to find the internal rhythm of the film, because I will never be able to, through editing, find the pace, the internal rhythm, the even nothing. So, you can create a good scene or bad scene in the editing room, as you know. And I will, so in a way, we were editing real time. I have to discover, and the most difficult question for me always as a director is the point of view. So, which point of view this scene is about. When you have three guys in a room, obviously in the editing room you can shift or take later decisions depending. Here it was, okay, here, but then it's about the... Anyway, so I have to be absolutely clear. All of us has to be clear. Every department has to be clear. Even the lighting guy, the dimming light, everything, in a way. So that requires a lot of rehearsal, which in a way it can be conceived that a lot of rehearsals can kill the... And it's right, it's true that if you over-rehearse, sometimes it becomes mechanical. But I discovered one thing, that because this extreme rehearsal with even physical precision, suddenly when the actors began to get so used to it, and so it's like to drive a bicycle. It's the most unnatural thing. But once you buy a tricycle, you are beautifully free riding something without your feet, and you are flat, And suddenly they became liberated of intellectualizing, of thinking about. So that mechanical thing began to be like something that they were using every day. But then, so we thought that we were prepared. But in the day that actually you are shooting, as they said, there's a mustache that has been shot, everything bad, something bad happened. And something that you thought it was working, it was not working. Or nervousness or some personal problem. So when we were there was a feeling too of what is beautiful about just the fact of doing it without rehearsal, which is the adrenaline and the fear of, I have to do it. And because all of the actors were attached. So what I discovered was very interesting, which I think benefit all of us, and the actors particularly, is that they were already grounded and absolutely clear of what they have to do step by step. But they count too, not relying of, I know how to do that, so it looks mechanical. They knew that it was so difficult to really nail it and really look that they have the fear of a one-time show. And that combination was amazing. But I couldn't work on it. I have to say that the only thing that I could say that I remember that it changed, it was the ending. The ending was a different ending. And when I was at 2 weeks of shooting, when I began to see which characters were these, and I began to feel the film, which it was chronological. I realized that the ending was absolutely terrible. It was horrible. It was betraying the whole thing. And I saw that this was a horrible ending, and I went into a panic. So I had to write and come with another ending. So I changed it.
What was the ending?
I will never say it.
Okay.
It's embarrassing.
Oh, come on, man.
I'm not going to push
Come on.
No, it's embarrassing. It's horrible.
Well,
and I have to
Is it as
write
bad as his apple?
worse.
Come on.
This is like Walmart commercial. No, it's
We want to learn.
no.
Okay.
This is bad. So I have to write it and sell it, and the studio was panicked because obviously the financiers, it was an ambiguous and kind of scary, and so. But I have to go through and nail it right, and we have to rebuild a thing. And here's James Kochtopol, the producer, who was helping me, and Peter Korn, my AD, and I remember that we have to change the whole schedule. and we have to build hospitals. I mean, we have to, in the middle of the shooting, it's like to change a wheel. And we were 2 weeks ago, it was 29 days, so we have to change a wheel as you are in 100 kilometers per hour. So it was a very scary moment, and I was not sure, but I felt that anything will be better than that ending. So I edit in the moment, and hopefully, people like it or not, but it was what I felt it was to be wrong. Yeah, right.
Right. My last question for all of you.
Oh, can I ask one question just about Alejandro?
Go, Wes.
Just how long are the takes? Like, how long are the pieces?
There's different lengths, but there's ones that are bigger than 20 minutes.
Really? Wow.
So there was times that, I remember I was talking to Michael Mann in the thing that there was one something that is very beautiful that I remember. It's about the acting and about all these that we were talking, that when Michael started rehearsing in this empty lot, Michael thought that we would be in a blocking state, so he didn't understand that it was this method that I was needing. And honestly, I didn't know about it. That's why it's the unexpected virtue of ignorance. We were ignorant of what we were going into, in a way, and irresponsibly. So when we were saying, I think Michael began to understand that it was a metric thing. It's 3 steps there, then you come here, you turn, the camera goes here, she will come, you have to go around, then we follow her, and then you will come, and then it's here, not here, it's here, and all that thing. With the obvious, and when we were, he was absolutely not ready in that sense. Nobody was ready, and he was nervous, I was nervous. I thought that there was something that it was not working. And one of the scenes was that when he shoot himself in the theater, and when we were rehearsing that, the camera was doing that, and said, so then you come, and blah, blah, blah. But he was not in character. He was walking bad, and I was nervous that maybe I committed a mistake of casting him. And it was not his fault. It was my fault because I didn't know him very well. So suddenly in that scene, when we were rehearsing in the early days, maybe the second day, he walked the way I wanted, and he put the face that I wanted. And I said, Michael, that's the character. That's exactly the character. You found it. And from there, the next day, he just began to build it. Funny enough, months later, when we were shooting in the St. James Theater with 1,000 people, he has to come out and perform not only for the camera, but for 1,000 people that were observing how Michael Keaton will kill himself. So it's a very difficult thing because it was a double kind of thing. And with a very long take of blah, 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 and arrived to that moment. And it was a crucial moment because the moment that the character, in a way, surrender, give up, and suddenly the ignorance virtue come out there. He suddenly is himself, finally. And has to be real and emotional, but anyway. And the first take was terrible. The second, horrible. The fifth, and it was 8:30. We had to leave the St. James Theater forever because the next day it comes another musical, and it was no play. 1,000 extras, we didn't have money, and not, it was that, and the nervousness was that. So suddenly, what we rehearsed 5 months before, and he knew perfectly, it was not working. Mm-hmm. So that's what I was saying, that suddenly he was grounded, but the technical and craft thing didn't work. It was the emotional thing and the reality of me facing 1,000 guys there and knowing that pressure. It's like, a football player that would shoot a penalty in the World Cup soccer. And I went to the room, and Michael said, I said, Michael, you remember that the first thing that we discovered in this guy was that, you remember what you did? And he was, what? I said, you remember that face, you did something, you connect with something. What? So I bring that thing that it was the scene that really, it was the seed of everything. So he was nervous, said, can I, give me 5 minutes, please, give me 5 minutes. I said, take any time that you want. And suddenly he came out, okay, last take, and he did a take, and boom! And he began to laugh, and I was in the monitor almost to say, stop! And he began to crack this performance that I love it, that it was absolutely contradictory of what I expected, and he said, Papa, and I was like, wow, got it. Hugs and cries, and blah, great, let's go. It was like a football kind of thing. We went to have a drink, saying, Michael, what you did? What happened to you? Where you were? I mean, and he said, Alejandro, for me, everything is about truth. I said, well, but you had it already. He said, but I was lost in the trust. So what he did and what he do, which I thought is amazing, is that he takes his shirt off. He go to the ground. He puts his stomach in earth, and he asks the planet Earth, what is truth? And the earth answered him. He put the shirt on, he came, and he did the most wonderful fucking performance. Wow!
Beautiful, yeah.
It's fabulous.
That's amazing.
My last question for all of you.
Next time, let's get into
All down on the ground. My last
Yeah.
question for you. What advice would you give to another director who is about to start a picture? Morten, what advice would you give?
Me?
Don't do it.
Yeah. No, please do it. I think that the only thing you can do, I think it's impossible to plan your career and see how you're going to end up. And don't be, always be very passionate. I mean, even if it's not supposed to make sense. If you find a reason for not doing something, don't do it. Try to make the choices out of because it's important for you, or it's because you cannot not do it. I think that's when you will do your best work, and then your career will do it. If you're trying to come into a meeting where if you're going to pitch something or whatever, and think, okay, I want to say what people expect me to say, or I want to please somebody, or whatever. As soon as you go into there, I think you have to be sort of like fearless and try to make your choices very selfishly, because it's important for you, and that's the only thing that matters.
All right, thank you, Morten. Clint, advice to a director who's about to start a picture?
First-time director or,
New director, rather.
New director. Okay, there's a difference.
Advice to a newer director about to start a picture.
Get more sleep than your actors.
Is it possible?
That's it.
Okay.
It's possible. You have to work at it, though.
Do you ever would you take a nap on the, go to the trailer, take a nap or anything like that?
No.
No, yeah.
No, I'm not that loose.
Wes, advice to a new director about to start a picture.
Well, I don't know if I have any advice of my own, but before the first movie I did, Peter Bogdanovich. Peter had been married to Polly Platt, who was our producer of that film, and I hadn't met Peter, but she put me on the phone with him to wish me well. And he said he was quoting somebody else, like John Ford or somebody like that. Somebody had said it to him, which was a pretty simple thing: take it one shot at a time. But that I always found is pretty good sometimes on a movie, because you got the whole thing you're worried about, you're trying to figure out all this stuff, and you say, well, let's just do this one thing here. We'll get this finished, and then we'll go to the next one. Sometimes it helps to remind yourself of that, I guess.
That's great. That's great, Wes.
Someone told me, also quoting someone else's advice, this is how it happens, but it was like, wear very comfortable shoes. You're going to be on your feet more than usually
and do you?
in the day. Arch support, whatever you need. So that's important. But to me, I think it's the balance between doing something as heady and egotistical as telling your story. I mean, it's a powerful medium we're in here. Yeah. That's such a big thing. But to balance that with the kind of the humility of what it takes, the egolessness, you got to kind of put that in your back pocket. So there's a balance there of asserting yourself and kind of being humble too. So it's an instinctual thing. I don't know. I don't know if you can give advice on that, but just be aware of it.
Got it. Thank you. Alejandro?
I remember one of the things that really impacted me more when I was very young. Werner Herzog went to Mexico in the college that I was, and he did a conference. And Werner was, almost God. And he arrived, and the first thing that he said, it was young students that want to be artists, filmmakers, and he said something that in that time I didn't understand, but I remember that he said something like, I just want to let you know, all of you, that being a director is not a fancy job. You have to be ready to be humiliated every day. And I went like, what? Werner Herzog said that he's humiliated, he's God. I mean, it's like, he was for me like, and in a way, it's true that there's a misunderstanding. Sometimes young filmmakers think that it's a very fancy, blah, blah. But it's not that he's humiliated. I don't know if that's the correct word, but it's just to be aware that you have to have a thick skin in that sense. I mean, there's a lot of things to fight for. And I think has to do with if you have something really to want to say something and be a little crazy, I think. We were talking about there's a condition about to make films. I think to make a film in a way is easy, but in a way to really live through this kind of human circus that is around, which is complicated, beautiful. I'm not complaining, it's incredible, beautiful. But I think if you don't have something really that the hungry to say something very loudly, if that doesn't guide you, I think it's very, very difficult to survive all what it implies in the mind. I think cinema can give you all, but it demands all of you. So it's a trade. There is no medium, I think. And I think that has to be very well understood. And in a way, when I heard Werner saying that, I didn't believe it. But in a way, I'm still learning. I'm not a filmmaker, but I'm learning. But it's true that the trade is intense. So for young filmmakers, I think it's important to know it in advance, I think,
Well, the five of you give more than all. It's reflected in the work that you've done this year and the work that you've done in the past. And we are lucky to be able to have spent this time with you, and we thank you for sharing with us. You bet, Rick.